So we're about to see the return of Google Glass. Is that what you're saying?
I think we learned a lot through the past. One of the things we learned, again, obvious in retrospect, is like they've got to be glasses that you really want to wear first and foremost. You know, like
as it turns out.
as it turns out.
Welcome to Access, part of the Vox Media Podcast Network. Alex Heath here with Ellis Hamburger, as always. Today we've got Sameer Samat, the king of Android at Google, on the show. But first, Ellis, how's it going?
Alex, I'm afraid I've been a bad boy.
Really?
I don't know if you could hear it in my voice, but I was in hooligan mode at the Michigan game this past weekend.
Hooligan mode.
And I forgot that I'm a podcaster now, and I was yelling way too loudly, and my voice was actually gone yesterday, and I almost caused a legitimate problem.
Wow.
So fortunately, I'm okay now.
What kind of tea are we working with to get the recovery that I'm hearing? You've got some.
Oh,
you
it's
still have
always
some
throat
dulcet
coat,
tones.
baby.
Throat coat.
And whatever
okay.
the little pharmacy has here in Little Tokyo, I can't read the label. I think it's eucalyptus. But yeah, hopefully my voice isn't too grating. I feel like can I get voice insurance?
I'm sure that exists.
I was thinking of David Duchovny in Zoolander, where he's got that glass bulb over his hand because he was a hand model.
Yeah.
I don't know. I apologize, though. I was being stupid.
That's okay. I'm not a sports guy. Is Michigan good this year?
Depends who you ask. But most importantly, they now serve beer at the stadium.
That's new?
It is.
What?
NCAA's cashing in, baby.
Wow.
You can pay the players now. You can get overpriced beer at the stadium. I just like the idea that it's like, it's not like the cashiers at the stadium when they're trying to get through a line of 100 people or the best ID checkers. But the beers are priced prohibitively expensively, so the students can't afford it anyway. That's called product design.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you had a good weekend, even though it sounds like we almost didn't have a pod this week. So that's good. I had a good weekend,
This
too.
is actually my 11 Labs voice clone right now, operating at 120 frames per second. You wouldn't even know.
We should try to experiment with that, see if we can just do an AI pod of ourselves. Think about the volume, the leverage we would have on the podcast ecosystem through AI.
I mean, I bet you Riza's got some insights from.
I'm sure she does.
An
Shout out
episode
Riza.
ago.
Yeah.
She knows some people for
2
sure.
episodes ago.
If we ever find ourselves in a really tough spot, I think she could
got
help
us.
us.
She's got us. Well, I'm glad you had a good weekend. Yeah, we went to Joshua Tree this weekend. Saw Lalome, fantastic instrumental band. It was a concert weekend, and then came back to LA and saw No Worries in Hollywood, which was really awesome. Anderson .Paak and Knowledge, and was really fun. So yeah, it was an unusually eventful weekend, but good to be back in the content minds with you.
Did you use any new tech this weekend, Alex?
No, actually, I kind of went back to basics. Just looked up at the sun.
So you've been a bad boy too.
No comment. Yeah, before we get into this chat with Sameer, some news dropped that is very much in both of our worlds. Me on the Sam Altman, push notification alert, and you in the browser world, that we should touch on before we get into this interview. What just happened? I mean, it was literally right when we started recording.
Yeah, I think they have started to learn when we record and started doing product drops during our recordings. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks.
They have announced Atlas, their new browser, long anticipated. It looks a lot like Dia from the browser company, my former employer, starting to look like they did the right thing by selling to Atlassian. I mean, we'll see. There's an incredible team over there. And they've also built a lot of tools for Dia that allow them to iterate very quickly on the UI that I think are going to be harder for Perplexity and OpenAI to copy, with their interfaces that look more like straight Chrome wrappers. But they certainly have a lot more distribution at OpenAI for the concept of a new browser, I would say.
Yeah, although it's a new app, Mac only for now. It seems like it's gated to one of the pro tiers. They'll be doing Windows, web, mobile in the coming months. They got to get those GPUs lit up. But yeah, what was your takeaway from this? I mean, it seems like ChatGPT sitting on the side of your browser, which is kind of what is becoming the new standard. It's like, Comet, Perplexity's browser does that. Dia, like you mentioned, this seems to be the new interface.
Yeah, I think for a while, a lot of people thought that AI was going to primarily just be a sidebar for you to help you get answers to your questions about what website you're on. But I think it's been proven that it just wasn't really enough. I hate copying and pasting things into ChatGPT really a relatable problem statement? I think I've been believing more and more that the agentic piece is really where it's all going to be at, especially since the browser is where you're clicking all day. And so one of the things they seem to have done is brought operator into the mix, and you could say, hey, add my usual beach grocery cart to my Instacart, and then just let me one-click buy it. I think that's in there. We've also seen that a little bit from Perplexity with Comet. We've seen that from Strawberry browser, company I worked with that launched the other day.
Strawberry.
That has little...
You're doing companies with fruit names now?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Wow.
They were named after the, how AI couldn't count the R's in Strawberry for a while.
Ah, that's good.
Yeah, they have an interesting take. I mean, everybody's battling for what's the right way to introduce this to people. Their approach is they have little companions based on use case that you can ask questions to. But I mean, I really do believe that, with the 800 million users, ChatGPT does have a pretty big advantage here, especially if they're bringing your existing memory into the new browser right out the bat, right?
Yeah.
That's a pretty big.
That to me is the biggest thing, is that your browsing habits in the browser and Atlas build off your ChatGPT memory and vice versa. That to me seems to be the wedge, the moat, the whatever tech speak word you want to use that OpenAI is really building towards, which is this profile of you that knows you better than any other company. And they still have work to do. Like I would say, our guest today, like Google has probably more data still because they have Gmail, calendar, all these things. But OpenAI is very quickly speedrunning getting there as well with its own full-fledged, app for anything you do with the internet approach that it's taking. And to me, the real interesting thing is that memory piece you mentioned and being able to bring your ChatGPT context into your browser and vice versa. That to me seems like if they can get that done at scale, it's going to be very hard for anyone else to win the chatbot war, so to speak.
Yeah, I think with all the folks I talk to every day in AI, there's definitely this agreement that whoever has the most context may win, simply because you have the best onboarding experience.
Mm-hmm.
We all know onboarding for new products is very difficult, especially when you have to learn something new, or as you have become the self-professed dog that is old and doesn't want to learn new tricks. I mean, I don't know. If Chrome gets a button that says, let Gemini see my entire web history for the last 15 years, and it starts proactively recommending the next concert that you want to go to, or the next purple shirt you want to buy, I mean, that's going to be very, very powerful.
You're right.
Because they, on one hand, do have a lot more context than even OpenAI has, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they should do that.
Are they using it yet?
I don't think so. I mean, I have Gemini now in the corner of my Chrome window here, and it can do some stuff, but it's kind of limited. I think they probably have all this regulatory red tape that OpenAI doesn't have or doesn't care about, and they just can't move as fast because it's a massive company. But you're right. That would be the move, is just backlog all of the data that Google already has and use it to supercharge my Gemini. And that alone would probably make Gemini more personalized on day one, just going back in time, not even needing to continue building data.
Yeah, and I think Sameer alludes to some of that as well with the personalization.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most people don't know what to ask AI for.
Yeah.
I think the next round of products and updates are going to be a lot more proactive, just doing things for you. Not even like tasks, but like recommending things that you hadn't even thought of searching yet. Things you didn't know you could ask. I mean, as a user, I'm pretty excited for that, honestly.
No, yeah, that's what you want. You don't want to just have to think of how to prompt everything anymore. It feels annoying. Yeah.
It's going to be a challenge to fine tune that, though, especially if you're a company that's trying to take a little chunk of everything. Like we get into a little bit Google Shopping with Sameer. I mean, Gemini is in a place where it could say, Ellis, we are very confident that you have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and have searched for children's books 18 times in the last few years. Here's a new one that came out that's just getting good reviews. But I have a lot of interests. Are they prompting me 5 times a day, 10 times a day, once a week? It is going to be very, very relevant. I think as we've seen with things like Instagram ads, how relevant they can be. But what's the load that's going to feel acceptable for this proactive AI recommendations? I think that might be one of the big questions of the next 5 years.
Yeah. Well, we should start getting this convo with Sameer. He's a Google OGer. He's been there for like 17 years. He's currently the president of Android ecosystem, which we demystify. And Google had an announcement this week in the XR headset space. And we kind of start talking about glasses and where all this is headed after phones. Really fun convo, a Googly convo. And I really enjoyed it.
Let's kick it to Sameer. Support for Access comes from Notion.
Ellis, you're a Notion Power user, right?
Oh, yeah. I've been a Notion Power user for years. And when we had 1 month to bring Access into reality, Notion helped us track our guest database, to-dos, and notes all in one place. And that is the truth.
That is the truth. We run this show on Notion. And you know what? They just introduced Notion agents. They're almost like teammates that can use Notion with you. They can draft, organize, and execute across your workspace and keep your work moving.
We'll talk more about how we use Notion later. But for now, try Notion and agents for free at notion.com/Vox. Support for Access comes from Warp. Warp is a top-ranked coding agent and one of the fastest-growing AI companies. Trusted by over 700,000 developers and 56% of the Fortune 500, Warp is redefining how software gets built. It understands your machine, stack, and codebase, combining the power of a terminal with the interactivity of an IDE, giving you a tight feedback loop with agents to prompt, review, and ship production-ready code. Find out why developers save an average of 5 hours a week. Try Warp free or unlock Pro for just $5 at warp.dev/access.
All right, Sameer, welcome to the show. You have been at Google for a long time, and we got a lot to talk about. You have your hands on a lot of things at Google. But first, I heard there's a pretty fun story about when you joined Google and how you joined Google. Can you take us back? This was what, like 2008?
Yeah, I joined Google in 2008, but the story I think predates that actually. And first of all, before we get into that, if I could just, nice to see you guys. Congratulations, by the way, on the pod. I think it's great. I've enjoyed every episode. Yeah, my story of getting to Google is a little bit roundabout. So I started a company in college. I went to University of California, San Diego, and I started a company while I was still in college there. And it actually started going really well, like way better than we expected. So the initial idea was we built a search engine for source code back when that was like a novel thing to do. So you could like find code that you could reuse and that kind of thing. And we launched it. I think I was like a sophomore or a junior in college. I don't really remember. But I know I wasn't going to class anymore. I know that. I was going to midterms and finals. That was like about it. And so we launched that, and then it started doing really well, actually. And we had this bigger idea that we were really excited about, using the technology that we used to build that, but for other problems. And it's kind of to like arm people with that technology. And so I was discussing this with my co-founders, and they were like, oh yeah, that sounds like a great bigger idea, but like we're trying to finish like our grad school applications. I was like, what are you talking about? Like we have this company, running this company, it's going well, like way better than we ever thought. And you guys are leaving to go to grad school? And so we had this fight, and in particular, me and one of my other co-founders had this fight. We're still really good friends today, but we had this fight, and so I was really like kind of demoralized. I didn't really know what to do, so I emailed in the middle of the night, like it was like 3 a.m. in the morning, Sergey@google.com, and I did not know Sergey, and this is like 99, I think, maybe 2000. Did not know Sergey, but we were in the information retrieval space. He obviously was like very big in the space. Like he was like kind of famous in the information retrieval space. We were just undergrads doing, this random thing. But so we kind of looked up to him, even though he had no idea who we were, and I emailed him, and I didn't really expect to get a response. Like I just, it's kind of like a desperation move. Like, and I asked him, I was like, hey, I'm sure you faced this problem of like, what would you do? What, like, your co-founders want to go to grad school. Like, what's the value of that versus other things? I got a response back at like 3:01 a.m. It's like, I know this problem well. Why don't you come see me? So I got on a plane the next morning and went up and saw him, and I spent most of the day with Sergey. And he talked to me. I did my first Sergey product review because he's like, show me your product, you know, and we went through it. He's like, this part's terrible. This part's kind of okay. You really need to do better here, you know? And so that's kind of a good experience. I think he was right about all the product feedback, by the way. And then he said, like, can you just wait here for a minute? And okay, I'll wait here. And then one engineer after another came in the room and like gave me the Google interview. And so at the end of that, he came back and he's like, hey, so I was thinking like maybe you should come work at Google. And I was like, Sergey, I'm like flattered. Like, I'm actually like, I don't even know what to say. Like, I'm really impressed that you would spend time with me and like you'd invite me to join your company. But like, I have this idea and like, I want to really go do it. And I don't know if I can do that right now, you know? And he like kind of paused and he's like, you know what? I really respect that. But if you're going to do it, please, can you do it right? Like, you need to raise some money. You need to get your bigger idea out there. Like, he gave me a bunch of advice. And then he introduced me to the first people that invested, actually. They ended up investing. And so he didn't need to do any of that. And that was awesome. And so we ran our company, which actually today would be called AI, like we would call it like AI in the cloud. Back then, those words were not really, we didn't really talk about it that way. It was machine learning as a service or something like that.
Mass.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, we did fine. The company was acquired by a public company and a few years later. And long story short, after working for them for a while, I was going to start another company as I moved up to the Bay with my wife. And somebody convinced me, like, you got to just talk to the Google folks, like just come by and chat with them. And that in and of itself is a funny story. My first interviewer was at Google with Sundar. And when I did decide to join, Sergey like came by and said, hey, I knew you'd figure it out eventually. Well, you know, welcome.
Wait, so many questions there. A, was Sergey wearing shoes when you first met him?
Oh, that's a good
I was going to ask the same thing, Alex.
Yeah.
I was going to ask the exact same
This
thing.
is why we're co-hosts.
Really? Okay. That's a good question. I don't know if he was wearing shoes. I have in my mind that he was wearing Crocs, but that could be hallucination.
And also, so give people a sense for people who don't remember this time. This was like 1999. What phase was Google in? This was pre-IPO.
This is definitely pre-IPO. This is like, they were in their first building. So it wasn't like a huge company. I remember because Sergey and I went out and took a walk and we like walked around the building. It wasn't like we walked around, you know, the Google campus. So it's very small, you know, and I feel like it may have been pre-revenue also.
Yeah.
I don't think they'd launched ads yet, I think. But it was definitely at a moment where everyone was realizing that this was special, you know, like it was definitely like, you know, it used to be like a skill where you knew how to use like Alta Vista and Excite and Northern Light and all these different things and you use them for different things. And like people thought you were like, oh yeah, like how come you always figure out this stuff on the internet or whatever? And it's like, oh yeah, because I'm good at using search engines. And then Google showed up and it was just like, you just have to use that, you know? So it was definitely at that moment where people were like realizing that.
Yeah, Ellis and I, we appreciate the chutzpah of a cold reach out, right? That's, as media folks, like we've done many of those. But where do you get the fortitude to cold email the co-founder of Google at 3 a.m?
Yeah. This goes back to like, I think the amazing superpowers you get when you know nothing. It's so interesting to me when, especially, I think it correlates with younger people, but I think they're still older folks that probably that are fearless in this way, you know? And there's fearlessness because you're just fearless, but I was not fearless in that way. I was fearless because I didn't know anything, you know? Like I mean, we made so many mistakes in our startup. Like, oh my God, I can't even I look back at some of it and I was just like, we were so stupid. But we learned a ton and we didn't know any better. So you just go build things and do things.
Support for Access comes from Notion. Notion is the connected workspace where teams write, plan, track, and ship together. And with Notion agents, those teammates aren't just human. Agents are AI teammates that can complete multi-step workflows end to end, building pages, updating trackers, and moving work forward while you focus on the hard decisions. We even use Notion ourselves.
I use Notion to run my business, meaning from using AI notes during meetings with very verbose founders, creating beautiful client-ready docs, and I even generate my invoices on there. So nice to have it all in one place.
We actually run this show on Notion too. It's how we track our guests, to-dos, and everything we need to get you access every week. The result of all this, less chasing, more reporting, and better conversations on mic. Notion is where the newsroom and the studio meet, and agents keep the work moving. Try Notion and agents for free at notion.com/Vox. Support for Access comes from Warp. Warp is changing how developers code. As a top-ranked coding agent and one of the fastest-growing AI companies, not to mention trusted by over 700,000 developers and 56% of the Fortune 500, Warp is redefining how software gets built. Warp understands your machine, stack, and code base, and is built at the terminal level, meaning it can write code, respond to system events, and even deploy to prod. And their mixed model approach outperforms single model approaches. It's built for the entire software lifecycle, from prompt to production, with the powers of a terminal and the interactivity of an IDE. Warp gives you a tight feedback loop with agents, so you can prompt, review, edit, and ship production-ready code. Find out why developers save an average of 5 hours a week, and see how Warp transforms your coding timelines. Try Warp free or unlock Pro for just $5 at warp.dev/access. That's warp.dev/access. So talk about a little bit how you got to where you are now. So you were there for a lot. I'm sure you did a lot over the years. You're now the president of Android ecosystem. Are you the only president at Google? Is that a common title?
That's a good question. I never thought about that.
I think you might be the only one.
I might be.
So this is like weird Google jargon, right? There's like SVPs and all these things, but like Google is also like, I think of Google as like a constellation of companies within a company. Google has, I forget how many, you'll know how many products Google has that have over 1 billion users. Is it 5, 6, 7?
I think it's more than that.
Okay, more than that. So it's, and you run at least one of them, Android.
I run two. The thing that I just got told recently is that Android and Google Play are 2 of our 2 billion plus user products. Which
2 billion club.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a 2 billion club now apparently.
Okay, cool. So how do you go from starting when you did in 2008 to running what I assume now is like thousands and thousands of people and these massive products? Was that just a natural thing that happened, or?
That's a great question. How did that happen? I've worked on a number of different businesses at Google. I actually started in the search team working on a little project called Google Health, which this is before like Obamacare and before we had smartphones. So you didn't have like Fitbit or digital health records or anything. So it was before its time. Is what I'm trying to say. And I think I made a decision with some other folks at Google, like very early in me getting there in like the first 6 or 7 months, that like this wasn't going to work. Like we're too early. We need to shut this down and maybe come back to it another time. And that was really scary because I just joined this company. But I said, this is the right product decision. And then Marissa said, like, would you be interested in working on this thing that we're having some trouble finding people to work on, which is called product search, which is like when you type in a search into Google for product related stuff. Would that be interesting? And I was like, yeah, seems kind of important. And so I worked on that. We built the product search team. There were like, I don't know, 10 or 15 of us. And we built that team. It became kind of a big business for Google. It's called Google Shopping now. We also built the travel business. So flight search, hotel search, that was really amazing. And I actually left Google for a year at a certain point. And I came back when Sundar became CEO. He called me and said, hey, I don't know if you saw the news, but I'm the CEO. I was like, yeah, Sundar, I saw the news. And that's kind of how he is. And he said, we could use some help on Play and Android. Would you be interested in coming back? And I thought to myself, like, you don't really get that call from somebody like Sundar very often in life. So it just seemed kind of obvious to me. And he was my first interviewer. I've been close to Sundar for a while. So it was great to be able to go back and work around him.
Going back to shopping and flights, which I've used a lot over the years. How did it feel that moment when OpenAI announced that the other day? I feel like that was pretty heavily inspired by the work y'all did in the old days. A decade later.
Yeah, but I think they're doing great work. I think it'll be really interesting to see where that goes. I'm proud of the work we did on those products. I mean, one of my favorite things that the shopping team is doing now is, we at one point we had this really cool feature in shopping where we actually built this warehouse where we would go to people who are listing their products in Google Shopping, and we'd ask them to send us their product. And we had built these 3D cameras that would like whiz around your product and take a 3D model of like the shoe or the dress or the whatever. And then we'd like,
this is the most Google thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. And so, by the way, one of the biggest problems was, what do you do with the product once you're done with it? Because we were like, we'll just send it back. And the interesting thing that I learned was like, the manufacturers were like, I don't want that back. Like it's not worth it for me to like, you send it and you send it back and I put the shoe back in the box and sell it. And so we had this like warehouse of stuff piling up, and we're like, what do we do, with this stuff? So that was an interesting side effect of that. But like we were doing that. One of the interesting things the shopping team is doing now with all the Gen AI stuff is they're able to just generate those 3D views on like almost anything. And you can even do like try on, you can take a picture of yourself and that blazer or whatever that you're interested in and see what it looks like on you. And so I just think it's like an awesome time for that team. They're just doing so much cool stuff, and it's kind of obvious that, shopping is a real area that'll benefit from all this new technology. So it doesn't surprise me others are doing it too.
I think it's an interesting space because you guys were to some extent ahead of the game with kind of jumping in the middle, using all of Google's powers to help you comparison shop or find the right product, whether it was a flight or a shoe or a shirt or something like that. What's your take on where companies are going to be okay with that in the age of AI or even agentic AI? Do they want to put all their products inside the engine, or do they want you to come to their site instead? Is it worth it for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think this incentive question is a really big one in the shopping space for a long time. I think it's been one that retailers and merchants have really wrestled with over time. I mean, it's not new as a problem they're wrestling with, right? If you thought about, if you're a retailer, you started dealing with this problem even before online, like you were trying to figure out which channels, do you only have your own stores or do you put your products in other people's stores, and that's like the beginning of that question, and it's like, well, we can't totally afford to have all our own stores everywhere. So I guess we have to use these other retail stores. It's like, okay, what's our experience going to be? How are we going to be represented? Who's going to be next to us? So it starts there. In the online version of that, I think the biggest question from long ago was Amazon. It's like when they started their third-party marketplace, which is like a genius move, and it's like, do you want to be in that, what a retailer I think would call like a normalized, unbranded experience? Like it's not your brand, it's not your store, it's Amazon's site, and you get to exist in it, right? And I think that's a really tough choice, because and I think it breaks down on like lines of like what you think your long-term competitive advantage is. If you're like, look, like we think our brand is like super critical and a direct relationship is absolutely key. Like you've got to, have the person interfacing with you and only you. That's why you don't see a lot of high-end fashion brands that get put in that normalized experience, because they're like, well, that just compresses our brand down to just the SKU. And we're so much more than that. We're like the way you feel when you engage with us. It's like the way that it makes you think about yourself relative to other people. There's always this soundtrack when you go to these high-end stores, like it's interesting. Like I think that soundtrack is like playing in the background, like literally. Like I think it's like carefully engineered to make you feel in a certain way, you know? Like Amazon's not going to start playing a soundtrack for you when you're shopping for, you know,
I
those
still
shoes.
have tinnitus ringing in the ears from my early days at Abercrombie and Fitch and Hollister. So I know what you mean.
The smell too. I remember the smell.
Yeah, there's like all these details, you know? And so I think it's the same question, but propelled into the modern, you know, like Gen AI world. It's like, you know, what is that trade? What is my experience going to be? How much of it do I own? How much of it is reduced down to least common denominator? And am I, you know, the word disintermediation, right, is always the word that I hear retailers bring up. Is like, am I disintermediated? Is it like, am I going to be substituted by something else at the last minute in the shopping cart? You know, is it a cart that is just me, or is it a cart? And, you know, I think like some people have tried to find a middle ground of this. Like, I don't know if you've used Instacart, but, you know, Instacart is like, it's like a marketplace, but it's got individual stores you shop at, right? And I actually think they have limits on like, you can't do a cross store cart, you know? And so all of this is speaking to the retailer of like, should I participate?
Rip a hole in the space-time continuum if you did a cross-store cart.
Right. I mean, you'd be surprised like how sensitive, you know, retailers are about this, because, you know, they worry like they're spending all this money building their brand, building their store, building their products, and then like they want to make sure that it's represented in the right way. So I think all this factors in. And I think you're going to see those things play out again with all the Gen AI stuff.
Support for Access comes from Notion. Most work these days feels like busy work. It's hunting, updating, and coordinating. With Notion AI, you get your own AI team powered by your work and all in one place. It knows your work context, your meeting notes, tasks, calendars, and plans. And now with agents, it actually does the work for you and your team. Anything you can do with Notion, your Notion AI agent can do too. Agent can build pages, structure data, search across your tools, and execute multi-step workflows at your direction.
Ellis, how are you going to use a Notion AI agent?
Honestly, I'm excited to use an agent to turn all my notes into nice, easy interview questions. Ranked by juiciness, of course.
We gotta have it juicy. At the end of the day, Notion is AI that understands the way a team works because it lives inside the same workspace you do. Notion plus agents. Fewer tabs, fewer handoffs, better work. Start for free at notion.com/Vox. Support for Access comes from Warp. Warp is changing how developers code. As a top-ranked coding agent and one of the fastest-growing AI companies, not to mention trusted by over 700,000 developers and 56% of the Fortune 500, Warp is redefining how software gets built. Warp understands your machine, stack, and code base, and is built at the terminal level, meaning it can write code, respond to system events, and even deploy to prod. And their mixed model approach outperforms single model approaches. It's built for the entire software lifecycle, from prompt to production, with the powers of a terminal and the interactivity of an IDE. Warp gives you a tight feedback loop with agents, so you can prompt, review, edit, and ship production-ready code. Find out why developers save an average of 5 hours a week, and see how Warp transforms your coding timelines. Try Warp free or unlock Pro for just $5 at warp.dev/access. That's warp.dev/access. Sameer, I don't know if you know this, but an enduring question in the tech industry is, what is Google's strategy with the Pixel? I think everyone understands Android. It's everywhere. It's the biggest operating system in the world. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But, you know, the Pixel, you guys are doing some interesting things. I mean, the new phones are good. I've got the Pro 10 Fold.
Do you like it? Do you like the Fold?
I like it. I do like it. I like the big screen. I'm going to get into this. Like, the issue for me is not the hardware actually at all. But it's this, like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, which is this like perennial problem I think you guys have with trying to get like decade plus iOS users to switch, which I want to get into. But first, just like on the Pixel, you guys just signed, I think, Alex Cooper as an ambassador. You had that flashy event in New York recently. It seems like you're making a very concerted play for the premium market in the US, and you're really trying to win in the US. But I think, like I was saying, an enduring question is, what is the goal of the Pixel? Because is it to actually compete with Apple in the premium market? Is it just to have a horse in the race, to experiment, to show OEMs what can be done with Android at its best, where it kind of can actually work closely with the hardware stack? So I'd love to hear from you. Like, what is the goal of Pixel? Are you all trying to be the dominant handset manufacturer as well as OS provider?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm glad you're enjoying your Pixel Fold. I like it a lot too. I use my laptop a lot less when I have the Fold. I just feel like I can get a lot done on it that way. But your question about Pixel is a good one. Taking a quick step back, Android is an open operating system, as I think many of your listeners know, and we have a lot of partners. So, my job and my role is like, we work with all of our partners, and
we just had Carl Pay from Nothing on the show last week. Yep.
Carl's doing super interesting stuff. I think I listened to your talk with Carl, and what I love about what Carl is doing is it's like exactly the vision that we have for Android, where there are different players with different perspectives building alternatives to for consumers to choose. Like, that's awesome. And I think he even says a lot, like he's focused on a particular audience, like Gen Z and what have you. And like, that is so perfect from an Android vision standpoint. It's like, okay, you're actually going to build an OEM that goes after this segment, and you're going to do kind of, like well, first of all, you don't see my desk, but I have like one of everything on my desk. Like, I have one of his phones here, and I think that's really cool. It's like really different, and I think it's great. And so from an Android perspective, there's many different ways to build great stuff. And when you talk about Pixel, I think Pixel is like Google's take on a phone and a phone ecosystem. And when I say that, it's like, it's not to diminish anything that a partner is doing. Like, like Samsung's doing, what OnePlus is doing, what Nothing's doing. Like, these are all different takes on how computing should work. And Google, as a company that first and foremost, I think is a lot about computing, also, I think, wants to have a way of expressing its view of what an awesome computing experience would be. And one thing that's great about that innovation is it can set a standard. It can raise the bar for the whole industry on the Android side, but also beyond that. I mean, my example of this that I love is computational photography. Even before Pixel had its new ID, we've had this ID change with the visor and all that. Like, Pixel, I think, was recognized as having the best camera. And a lot of that was not the optics. A lot of that was the software, the computational photography. And so I think Google demonstrated that you can have amazing photography on these smartphones. And what that did is, like, a lot of people started copying that. It kind of set a new standard. And before that, I think the general impression was that the iPhone was better at photos and that Android phones were not very good at photos. And I think Pixel changed that. And then other Android OEMs figured out how to do a better job of that. And I think we've begun to change that impression. Certainly in other parts of the world. In the US, I think people are still realizing, how much better your photos can be. But I think it was like, we want to do something different. We want to reach a new audience. We want to reach the iPhone user. We want them to understand that there are other alternatives out there that are built and speak to their needs. And if you look at what Pixel has achieved in Japan, just as an example, and this kind of speaks to your next question of old dogs and new tricks, which I think I know where you're going. If you're an iPhone user, can you really switch? And actually, we've taken pretty meaningful share in Japan. Of iPhone user back over to Android/Pixel. And I think that's just like good product, good marketing, bringing down walled gardens, and getting it right at retail. And so I do think it can be done. It's hard. There are still a lot of remaining challenges that need to be busted through. Not all of them are technology locked challenges. Some of them are walled garden challenges, but all of that are things I think that are possible over time.
Yeah, I mean, using the Fold was a great example of this for me because the hardware is great. I mean, there's that tiny little crease, which I know you guys will get rid of in the Fold, but you can't really notice it most of the time. I do like the bigger screen. The hardware around these phones feels like it's rapidly commodifying. They all start to look the same, similar weight, screen quality, camera quality. What's really different now is the software. And I'm really interested by all the Gemini integrations and AI stuff that Android is doing. And it does feel like you guys are ahead of the curve there from Apple, because you have, the Gemini stack, which is very good. But man, yeah, it's just this like mental block of like, it's going to take me over an hour at least to just like learn this thing, because I've been so on iOS for so long. I know it reflexively. And I feel like that barrier of just like, yeah, I think it's cool, but I either don't have time or the will to learn it is maybe a harder barrier for you guys to break than anything else.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Do you feel like it's the learning curve part, or did you miss certain things more, like AirDrop and the green bubble, blue bubble thing and all that?
To be honest, no. I think a lot of that stuff is, you guys have parity with a lot of that stuff. I mean, there is Apple ecosystem stuff with the Mac and all that and continuity that's nice, but I don't really feel it's that. For me, it's just like, it's old dog, new tricks, man. It's like, I've been on OS for so long. And Ellis, I don't know if you sympathize with this, but like the idea of learning a new operating system is just like, yeah, if I have a whole Saturday afternoon one day, I'll do that. But it's just a very high bar. And it has to be something very cool and very new and very different for me to want to do that.
Well, I do think one thing is like, what I will agree with is the last thing you said, which is like, I do think that like Apple does a good, like, I don't think iPhones have changed that much over the last 2 years, but I do think Apple makes a good product, and
yeah.
So you have to give them their credit for that. And I don't think there's a ton of people who are sitting there saying, I hate this phone. I think there's a lot of folks that are like, I'm bored, like I want more, like I think there's more out there, like, and so I do think you have to innovate and you have to build really cool stuff that people understand, feel like addresses a real need. I can give you one small example of that, by the way. We launched this thing called Circle to Search last year with the Galaxy S25 and Pixel, S24 and Pixel, sorry. And, it's like this like really simple concept in retrospect, but it's like you long press the home button on your Android phone, and then you can circle, like with your finger, any object or any image that's on the screen. You could be using whatever app you want, and you bring Google multimodal search to that thing that you've circled, right? So you can like circle the picture of the bow tie, just to continue that, on this person that's wearing it, or the watch, or you can circle the waterfall in the picture and say, where is that? And, and you get this like really cool search experience. So we launched that, and, I was talking with a very big retailer in the US and their chief merchant. And he was telling me like, it's such a cool feature. There's obviously a ton of technology behind that, like a ton of AI and multimodal capabilities. Y'all did a good job of marketing it, and that you didn't talk about those things. Like you didn't like geek out in the marketing. You just said like, here's how this is useful to you on a daily basis. Like you're shopping, you want to plan a trip, you want to do this, you want to do that. Like, here's how it's super useful. People got it instantly. And he said, I have to tell you, I have people coming into my store asking for the phone that has Circle to Search. And I was like, okay, that's like really cool. And I think it's like when you get those pieces right, I have so many thoughts on this, by the way, of like how to build products with AI and how to market them effectively, but I think when you get that right, I do think it can move the needle. And I do think there is a moment here where we do have some advantages, I would say, on the AI side versus the other folks. And I think there's just an opportunity to change the interface, like in a big, big way. And that's exciting as a builder of products in general, but as a OS maker and as experience maker, like making that as smooth as possible, because Circle to Search is actually possible without that integration. Like you could download the image, you could open up the Lens app, you could upload your image, you could then crop, you could have done those things, but I think it's like, how do you actually make it seamless and make it easy? And when you do that, I think it really takes off.
As the resident marketing and messaging fuckboy on the podcast.
Is that on your business card? Or
yeah, that's also the title. Yeah.
I just love this boredom insight so much about people being a little tired of their iPhones, and the new vanilla campaign I just absolutely love.
Do you like that?
I do. I mean, it just really hones in on this idea that like it's kind of fine Everybody kind of likes it, but if you want something a little fresh and new that actually is going to move you emotionally, try this new thing. And then you show it through the circle to search, through some of the AI features. And I think that is the only way to break through to anybody but phone holster guys.
Which I am. Yeah.
You have a holster now?
Yeah. And I mean, the lanyard, everything, you know, this is why I'm probably not the best example of someone who you need to be trying to convert, Sameer.
Were you involved in that?
In the vanilla ad? No, I mean, I was involved in so much as like early concept. What are the things that really resonate? But in terms of making that happen, like we have such an amazing marketing team. They're so talented. I think it's also a willingness to be a little bit more direct about what we're trying to convey. And I think that's the benefit of having Pixel. You know, I mean, I think first and foremost, the product has to be really good. And, you know, I think Pixel's won like best smartphone of the year, like a couple of years in a row. Like the reviews have been pretty good. You know, and so the teams work super hard on the hardware, on the software. And so I think the marketing team felt, you know, hey, like we have a story to tell here, you know, and there's some real truth in the market around phone boredom, you know? And I think something new, something different was clearly a feeling that was resonating as they looked at it. So I think that campaign is great. I also like what they did with like what was it called again? Best friends forever. You know, where the Pixel and the iPhone are have you all seen those?
Yeah.
This is like last year. I thought some of those are cute as well. But I think it's important that it be grounded in something that people really feel instinctively and emotionally, not something that's mean or doesn't really resonate. And I think sometimes when you just throw tons of features out, you know, you're speaking to a different part of the brain, right?
Laundry list never works, right? And neither does the like, you're ivory tower elite and we're the ones who actually care about technology and features. And I think that's some of the stuff maybe Samsung has touched on in the past, or, you know, that's why I love the vanilla, is that it speaks to conformity, but not in a way that's kind of insulting, maybe. Still like vanilla ice cream once in a while.
Yeah, vanilla ice cream is, I mean, I think that's a really good point. You know, like I think one of the reasons maybe it does resonate is because like there's nothing wrong with vanilla ice cream, you know?
It's fine.
And I think that's how people feel.
Well, like any good podcast, we've saved the actual news and timing of why you came on this week for the last 9 minutes we've got here. So let's try to get into it. You all announced this week that this is Android now. We're moving off of phones. Your first kind of headset, VR, I don't know if you're calling it VR, mixed reality headset partner for Android with Samsung. This has been a long rumored, reported on, teased device. It's finally coming out. I have so many questions about this, Sameer. I mean, I've been covering headsets for as long as I can remember. And it really feels like the timing of this right now is very curious to me, because if you look at what's going on, like Apple seems to be walking back from the Vision Pro. I know they just did the chip bump, but like Vision Pro has been
chip
kind of
bump?
yeah, it's been kind of a dud for them. You can get them for half off on eBay. Meta, meanwhile, didn't do a Quest upgrade. It seems like they're kind of giving up on Quest. They won't say that, but that seems to be my read. They're more focused on the glasses. So why is Google doing headsets with people like Samsung, other partners in the year 2025? Like, is there a headset market? I'm just very skeptical that there actually is one.
It's a great question. I mean, I think there is a headset market for sure. I think the question is how big will that market be over time, is what you're asking, right? And I mean, there are lots of different prognostications on this. My view on it is that the headset for us was important for a few different reasons. When we started the Android XR platform, we had a multi-year vision, you know, of a variety of different devices that people would want to build that were used for different purposes, right? And you know, I think when people think about a headset today, what you see is, you know, a device that's like pretty heavy relative to other things that you would wear on your face. You know, you probably wouldn't go out in public with it, you know? I mean, I've seen some people use them on planes. I've never done that, but like you don't generally think of it as a device that you're going out and about with, right? But what it does have is it does it is a first stop on a long-term vision to building this this augmented reality future, right? Where you have a number of things you have to perfect on this device to really get that right. You have to get world locking right. You have to get you have to figure out how to do digital and optical pass-through done well. You have to deal with thermals. You have to deal with a whole bunch of things, weight and the dynamics of all of that. You have front-facing cameras that you want to be able to do perception with. There's like a lot there that you can use as you build this future vision. So for many companies, it is their first stop along the way to that future vision. It's not like it's just so like it has many meanings for us. Like the reason we're doing it is like we do think there's an opportunity in headsets, but we also think there's a lot of technology that we perfect for the future that's going to be really, really important to glasses. And so, and I don't think that's a unique strategy to Google. I think that's a lot of what, when you really get deep in the space, you start to realize that it's a great form factor to begin getting this stuff out there, in that way. The other thing that was really exciting to us is to start to perfect a new human-computer interface, which is, one of the things that's really awesome about this headset is like when we were building it, kind of the AI, all the Gen AI stuff happened early on. And so we still had time to say like, whoa, take a step back. And we actually delayed things a lot, because of this. We said, whoa, take a step back. Let's actually build Gemini into the UI, not as kind of like the UI is done, and then we're going to add Gemini on the side, and we'll try to like integrate it in over time. But like, let's build it in there from the beginning in a way that's very different. And I think why this form factor allows for that initially is like a few different things. Like, there is no dominant like way of using a headset. Like the UI is not something that, old dogs, new tricks, right? Like you don't have 10 years of experience using a headset where you're like, oh, what is this thing, So you can start from scratch in some ways, right? Second, I think when you want the future vision of a personal AI assistant, in something like glasses, you do need this notion of like, it can see the world with you, it can hear the world with you. And you want to start perfecting those models. One of the things that's great about the XR environment with the headset is that a lot of that environment is rendered, right? And so you can pass that entirely through to the model perfectly. So it can be the first place where it can see everything that you can see, it can hear everything that you can hear, And so like we're going to learn a lot about that, and you want to start building experiences with that capability. We had this moment where we were looking at it, like what was possible with Gemini, and this is like very early Gemini, so we were like, what if this improves like 10x? Like Demis is saying this is going to improve 10x. Like what if this improves 10x? And we just sort of looked at each other and we said like, okay, like remember the Iron Man movies, like where you put on this thing and then you have Jarvis with you? Like Jarvis isn't like this thing that you go to occasionally and you're like, hey, help me with this thing. It's like constantly with you, sees what you can see, can actually take actions for you in the UI, can actually accomplish tasks for you while you're doing this, it can do that, right? And we're like, that's pretty awesome. Like, I bet that would be amazing to build and like would be really relevant for glasses, would be really relevant for other form factors. Let's do that.
I know what the killer use case is. Killer use case, I circle to search my wife and I say, what did she tell me to move to the garage? I already forgot.
Yeah, that's a good one.
500 million units sold.
500 million units. Yeah, we'll have to add that to the list.
So when you and I were catching up recently, Sameer, a thing you were telling me about was like you're really interested in this idea of like supermemory, which I am too in glasses.
Exactly.
Like, the idea of like perfect recall of faces, conversations, context, all that. And Google feels uniquely positioned to do that in a glasses form factor. Is that the killer app? Is that you said Jarvis, but like, to me, that alone is a thing that will get people to buy something like that.
I mean, supermemory is definitely something that I haven't met a single person that tells me that wouldn't be really helpful in their life, right? Tons of privacy issues there that we have to work through, right? So like, there's a lot to solve there. But as a vision for like how to help you in your daily life, I mean, just seems really, really useful. Another one that's maybe shorter term is something I was encountering the other day, which is like you buy a piece of furniture, you have a set of instructions, and God help you, and I'd love to just like glance at the instructions and then like start assembling the furniture and have something like tell me like, no, like it's that one, that screw, it's attached this to that. It's like, and I think those kinds of things can be really helpful. And I think all this stuff is going to be possible, which is why it's super exciting. And I think that this form factor is really, really interesting.
So we're about to see the return of Google Glass. Is that what you're saying?
We have a lot of history in this space. We're not new to it. I think we learned a lot through the past. We're not new to XR. We had Daydream before. We had Google Glass for glasses. I think one of the things, so we learned a lot about both of these, which we've tried to incorporate. If you make it too hard for developers to build in this new environment, like it's just a really heavy lift, and they have a lot to do, which is so obvious. I mean, obviously, but like I think this time around, we've really tried to make it like if you're building for Android, then your app is already going to work in a 2D form in XR. And then we've tried to make it like you can add on parts of your app that are spatialized, you don't have to like start from scratch. So like Maps, like Google Maps is like, there's 2D maps, which are really important, but then there's like these 3D things they've added on, which are immersive. And so like when the 2D version of it updates, that just like pulls through. That's not like a different app, So I think that's really helpful. We learned that the hard way, and it's really key. On the glasses side, one of the things we learned, again, obvious in retrospect, is like they've got to be glasses that you really want to wear first and foremost, like
as it turns out,
you need to want
we had to learn that lesson at Snapchat as well.
Yeah. Like this is important, and you need to want to put them on your face, and you need to want, and not just like the fashion part. The fashion part is really important. The other part that's really important is like, does it support my prescription? What if I want it to have transition lenses? There's a 2 billion people who wear, eyeglasses in the world, and there's a whole industry built up around the customizations they want, so you've got to support that stuff because there's a whole history behind it, So I think that's really important, which is why we picked some great partners, Warby Parker and Gentle Monster to start with, that are going to be working with us on all of that. So yeah.
But there's going to be Google first party glasses too.
Like well, glasses. We haven't announced anything.
Yeah,
I think.
But I mean, I think it's a very fair question to go like, what would you even call it? Because right, like Google Glass carries a lot with it, right? Like there was the whole glass hole stigma. It was a very early product. It was the right direction, but just I think way too early. And you were there at the time, and I'm sure you remember the company kind of going through that reaction to that product.
Definitely.
How does that inform how you would approach doing Google Glasses in the future?
Well, I mean, I have a picture actually of myself. Like I was able to, I wasn't working on Android at the time or Google Glass when it was back in the day, but I was around. And so I had a friend, I think, who was working on it, and he lent me one to use. And the main thing I wanted to do was actually go out in public somewhere with it to experience that element of it, just once to see. So my family did a trip to Disneyland, and I was like, okay, like I can see taking really cool video or photos like on a roller coaster or something, like with my kid, like let me wear it. But I'm also going to get a lot of weird looks, and I want to see how that feels, and it didn't feel great, it didn't feel great. And I think a lot of it was like some people, you could tell they were curious, like, what is that? Like I would say that was a majority of it, because I think people are generally pretty nice, and they were just like, oh, I'm curious. Like maybe he has trouble seeing, or maybe that's just like some new gadget, or like, what is that? I don't know what that is. But then there were definitely some people that were like, okay, you're one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it didn't feel great. So, I think it's really important that whatever you put out there, there's just as much a component here of technology, fashion, and also, wearability, and all those things together. Besides the watch, there are very few things that you're going to wear on your body that are a piece of technology for that many hours a day, right? It's a combination of many different disciplines together, and getting it right is super hard.
It does feel like the world is more primed for that, though, with the success of the Meta Ray-Bans recently, the last year or two, right? Shows that maybe we're in an era now where people are more comfortable with this idea. I think people are used to being watched and cameras being everywhere, more so than they were when glass first came out, all those years ago. So maybe there's also like a societal timing element of this that is bigger than anything you could do.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think, credit to the Meta folks. I mean, their initial glasses also don't look like, they look like glasses, and so I think one of the things is like, if you didn't see the ring light up or read the side of it or whatever, you would just think that somebody had a pair of sunglasses on from a distance, and so I think that just helps a lot. I do think there will still be questions that everybody in the industry will have to wrestle with about data, and what's being captured and when and how and all of that. And I think there's two sides to that, right? There's one side of it is the bystander problem of, what about this that's going on amongst us right now is being piped somewhere, right? And then the other is for you yourself, if you're walking around your house with them, where is that data going, and where is it, one of the examples that I give is like, you're walking around the house and at the end, right before you go out the door, you don't know where your keys are. If you've had the glasses on watching the whole time, which is not a mode that I think is by default, but like you turned it on, like you would be able to ask like Gemini, like, hey, where are my keys? Because it would have seen, what, and it's like, oh, it's on your nightstand. Like, oh, okay, thank you. Now, so that's really helpful, but also, it's seeing a lot of things. Right. And so I think these are all things that we're really discussing intently internally and making sure that, we have answers to these things. And you're right. I think society is also evolving. But I think privacy is still obviously really, really important.
Definitely.
And I think it is like, I don't think that's going away. And I for us as product builders, we think it's important too. And so we're going to have to get all that right.
I know we're out of time here, so I have a very critical last question. What is your favorite Google internal corporate buzzword at the moment?
We had Rise on and we were talking about orthogonal. We've had some googly episodes recently.
Well, Google has innovated so many words over the years.
Okay, I'll give you a personal pet peeve, maybe of a word that gets used sometimes. I think the word aligned is a pet peeve of mine. I'm not saying I've used it, okay, but like, I think aligned sometimes is a way of saying that we've talked to each other so much that we've now taken the average of what we're all saying and we can kind of pass it as something we all agree to, but we haven't really agreed. And sometimes in product building, like you really have to make starker, harder choices about stuff. So sometimes, not always, the quality of the thing you're creating is inversely proportional to how many times people have said, we're totally aligned on this.
Well, luckily we're not totally aligned on everything, Sameer, but I think this was a great conversation. I do feel generally aligned, maybe not totally aligned. I don't know about you, Ellis.
Okay. That's good. It was great talking to both of you. Congrats on all the progress with the pod, and I'm glad I could.
Thanks so much, Sameer.
Be a part
Thanks
of
for coming on.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks again, guys. See you soon.
Thanks to Sameer for coming on the show, the Android Prez.
We're a new show, so please follow, like, subscribe everywhere you get podcasts at Access Pod. We're also on YouTube with full video, so check that out.
If you like this episode, leave a 5-star review or a thumbs up, or ideally both, and share with a friend. It would mean a lot.
You can find my newsletter at sources.news.
And you can find me at Hamburger on Twitter and at meaning.company.
Access is part of the Vox Media Podcast Network. Our producer is Shiraz Dumais.
See you next week.
Bye.
Thanks to Notion for their support of Access. What does Notion and their Notion agents actually do? How about track beats, sources, open record requests, and fact check? An agent can spot conflicting dates, flag missing citations, and even tee up follow-ups. And it could also even run the show. Guest research, run of show, edit checklists, asset library, and delivery. You could tell Agent to prep for Thursday's taping, and it'll assemble a brief from notes and links, fill the rundown template, and ping everyone who needs to be in the studio. That's useful. So yeah, it can do all that and more, whatever your workflow. See for yourself and try Notion and Agents free at notion.com/Vox. Support for Access comes from Warp. Warp is a top-ranked coding agent and one of the fastest-growing AI companies. Trusted by over 700,000 developers and 56% of the Fortune 500, Warp is redefining how software gets built. It understands your machine, stack, and codebase, combining the power of a terminal with the interactivity of an IDE, giving you a tight feedback loop with agents to prompt, review, and ship production-ready code. Find out why developers save an average of 5 hours a week. Try Warp free or unlock Pro for just $5 at warp.dev/access.